Welcome, everybody, to the Credit Connection. I'm here today with Bonnie Ortiz, who's the CEO and founder of the O2 Solutions Group. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you, Sarah.
And Bonnie and O2 specialize in operational excellence, project management, and strategic planning, which in kind of a unique way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, Bonnie?
Sure, I appreciate it, Sarah, and glad to be here today. Um, I have had a long career in both business development and operations, but my passion is really operations. I have been with the credit union industry now probably almost 20 years and loving the mission-driven organizations. Started at the Partnership Federal Credit Union through a merger and found my way to working with people, processes, tools, their resources, really trying to help them find all the efficiency and effectiveness that they can.
Yeah, no, and right now efficiency is so key, right?
Yes.
For credit unions, probably every business, of course, but as the economy is kind of uncertain and credit unions have the tight liquidity situation right now, what's essential for a strategy or a culture or both of operational excellence?
I think I would start with what I just said, analyzing your people, your processes, your systems, and your tools on a regular basis. And there's no better time to do that than during your strategic planning. And I know that, for years, we've looked at strategic planning as if, well, we know that we have to do it. We know that NCUA requires it, but it's always comes at such a rough time, right? You're budgeting, you're doing all kinds of other things. But the reality of it is that's the perfect time for you now, especially after COVID, trying to get members back and trying to make sure that our membership is growing and that we're also penetrating our existing member base. It's so important for us to stop and look at what we really want to accomplish in the next year, build our goals, not only for growth, but also to align those to our operational capacity.
Right.
If we don't know whether we are efficient or effective in all areas across the credit union, it's going to be hard for us to put that kind of a plan and a strategy together. So one of the things I love doing is starting there, helping folks to understand how to really go through a conference by aligning the two together and
Mhm.
making sure that when you come out of that conference, you not only have your goals identified, but some of the strategies that you are going to employ, because that way the projects that you choose that come out of that are always going to align to your goals. And you're
Mhm.
going to prioritize and make sure that, those that just aren't right are pushed to the side.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes it easier to say no, right? It's part of the efficiency part, I assume. So what are some of the common inefficiencies that you run into with your credit union clients, and how can you talk a little bit about how you go about streamlining that?
Sure. Well, let's start where it all begins, right? With account opening. And often, while we're all trying to strive for more digital solutions and more efficient and effective solutions, we can take those off the shelf solutions and make them into monsters, depending upon the policies we have, the customization we put to it. And so making sure that members are going to be able to get through that application process in what they consider to be a reasonable period of time,
Mhm.
because otherwise they're going to walk away.
Right.
Likewise, on the lending side, you know, your turnaround time, for your loan processing, your loan approval. Those are two of the big areas. Then when you start to get into the back office, you're starting to look at things like collections. If you have a lower delinquency rate, that might not be as important to you, but for those credit unions who are using a lot of indirect lending, maybe those credit unions that have a membership that doesn't have all A paper, they have to watch that. And so you can get yourself into a negative place when you don't have the right processes and procedures in place and maybe even the right outsourcing models for you.
Mhm.
The last thing I think I would say, certainly this isn't those aren't the only areas, but I would say that as we look at the member journey, that it is really important for us to track that member experience and really look at the gaps that you have, so that then you identify early on where your problems are, and then you can solve for them a lot more easily.
And how you solve for a lot of them might be project management. So great segue. Uh,
True, true.
so you've said before to me that, credit unions often come to you with leading with project management questions. What sort of requests are you seeing right now?
I see 3 different types. The first type is really around, I've gotten myself started into this massive project. Card processing migrations, for example. They're large, they're complex, they're riddled with risk, and they often have 2 or more vendors associated with it. So when you take a look at something like that, small and mid-sized credit unions often don't have the bandwidth to be able to support a project and support everything they do on a day-to-day basis. And most of the time, they really don't have the disciplines in project management along with their subject matter expertise. So they end up getting themselves halfway down the road, 3/4 of the way down the road, and they're in trouble. And so I'll come in and I'll, kind of resurrect that with my tools and my processes. The other thing that I see is folks really wanting their help with prioritizing the projects that they know they have to get done and figuring out, how do I get, 10 pounds into a 5-pound sack?
Mhm.
And so we work through that to make sure that they are choosing the right projects and then putting the right people to it and having a playbook
Mm,
that they can use for scope management, timeline management, budget management. And then I would say the last place that I see it is from process improvements. So we were just talking about operational efficiency and excellence. And if you want to get there, every process improvement project you identify is going to require a project plan. And
mhm.
so, if I'm asked to help or to provide advice or recommendations on how to improve a particular department or process, that always ends up being a project. So,
Mm.
but step one and then a step two.
Yeah, and it's interesting because those inefficiencies really run counter to providing members the highest return possible. And that ROA is how we continue serving members, right? I mean,
Isn't that the truth?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that
it
is.
really helps credit unions remain relevant, by being efficient, producing a better bottom line so that they can continue serving more members with newer, widgets and whatnot along the way and remaining relevant.
I'm actually sitting in a credit union today, and this morning I sat in a meeting and we were talking about something with regard to onboarding your new staff and how difficult it is in member services and retail areas these days to be able to do that efficiently and effectively and retain that staff, right? And the comment was made by the CEO, well, when we started this process, we didn't have you and we didn't have these project management playbooks, but now we do. So we're going to start this all over again.
Uh-huh. And so, since we've kind of gotten onto the philosophy behind credit unions, one of the things that O2 does that's a bit different is in strategic planning. You mentioned this at the beginning that it has a kind of through a operations lens, if you will. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about that?
Sure. You know, O2 is very different in a number of ways. My philosophy is that, you roll up your sleeves and you help people to get down where they are. So you want to look at what they're trying to accomplish, what their goals are, what their needs are, but often they don't even know the right questions to ask,
Mhm.
because they're so busy, all day long. And again, I'm going to say, smaller and mid-sized credit unions are trying to wear a million hats. And so bringing the right people to the table, asking the right questions, making sure that they're, you know, um, thinking about it from the lens of operations. Operations is often the back office. It's often thought of as the back office, but it really isn't. When you look at growth, and you think about growing your membership and ensuring that you both grow the membership and deepen the engagement with your membership, if you don't have a plan for getting there, it's just not going to happen, because if your people aren't strong enough, if you don't have the right people in the right seats, if you don't have the right processes or any processes, and if you don't have the right tools or the right resources at hand, training materials, etc., you're not going to meet those goals.
Mhm.
And if you do, your staff is going to be so burnt out, by the time that you get to the end, that the churn starts to occur, you know.
Mhm.
So that's what we do. And I would say one final thing, and that's that we roll up our sleeves. We are not just strategists. I have a group of very seasoned people who have been there, they've lived it, they've done it in almost every department, in a credit union. And therefore, they want to roll up their sleeves and not just build the blueprint with the tasks and assign them to the credit union folks, but they're going to willing to take on those tasks.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, no, and that operational piece is so important, and the efficiency, especially with those small and mid-sized credit unions that you mentioned, because we're seeing them merge left and right, and the more efficient we can be, and again, as you mentioned, wearing two and three hats each person, the more efficient you can be, the more likely they are to succeed in surviving and thriving as a credit union. Um, so anyway, I'm gonna get all philosophical in the credit union, deep in the credit union philosophy again. But anyway, so I'm gonna let you wrap this up. Why don't you share your final thoughts with us about credit unions, the operational efficiency, however you'd like to wrap it up. Go for it.
So I think I'm going to start with something that I say on my website kind of is right out of the gate. And that's, I have had the pleasure of working with an enormous number of incredible CEOs, people with vision, people with foresight, people who are innovative, and people who really want to make a difference. Often those folks are not married to someone within their own credit union that has the same passion, the same intent and focus on the operation side of the business. Because I love that side of the business so much, and because I enjoy partnering and having that teamwork with the CEO, with the rest of the C-level suite. It just makes it so easy for us to come in as a team and really, as again, roll your sleeves up and help. So
Mm,
whether I start at the beginning by helping you with your strategy and determining how we align those goals to your projects, or whether I start at the back end with project management because you're in trouble, and um, the goal is to really build a long-term relationship. The
mhm,
goal is to be there to serve those teams that are serving their members,
mhm.
because it's members first,
Absolutely.
always.
Always.
Uh, and that's just such the cool thing to me about credit unions, being in this industry. I've been in the telecommunications industry, the healthcare industry, and now the financial industry, all focused on credit unions. I don't think I'd go anywhere else.
Yeah. And that is an excellent place to wrap up. Thank you very much for your time today, Bonnie.
You're welcome.